I'm Lyman, and I'm here with my PIC, Marcel, and together we do the Jazz and Grass and Other Stuff Too podcast.
Yeah, that's right. We also do Jazz and Grass on Instagram, which is really cool. I don't think we talked about this in the podcast yet, but I think we're at 550 followers right now. We're coming up on 600, yeah. But we just had this big surge. We got like 200 new followers, right? Was it around 200?
Yeah. I think the exact number is 256. Not that, I'm counting or anything.
Wow, someone's been watching the Social Blade, yeah?
I shed a tear every time it drops down one.
Anyway, why don't you tell the people what this podcast is about?
It's just two guitar players talking about music and music stuff. Ill-structured. Also, PIC means partner in crime.
Oh, not person in charge? That's a bummer.
Yeah, well, Marcel pretty much is in charge here.
That's not true, man. You're in charge of the podcast. I just pretend I'm in charge. I just take credit. So, yeah, I guess that means I'm like most people in charge.
Absolutely. But yeah, we don't really plan much. We just get together over Google Hangouts and just kick it and BS a little bit.
Yeah, if you're into low quality podcasts, we're your guys. So here we go. So today we thought that we'd kind of do some like mini rants, I guess. So we're going to talk about some things that bother us and maybe some things that we kind of expect of good musicians and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. I got one. I'm going to need to like set the scene a little bit for this one. So imagine you're at a rehearsal. You're playing with somebody you play with all the time, but like the two of you are subbing for a different group. And you got a whole bunch of new songs to learn. So I had very limited time to learn these songs, and I guess I'm dropping the pretense that this is not me. This is me and somebody I play with.
The illusion is shattered.
I had, a certain limited amount of time to get some songs charted out before a rehearsal. So I was hauling, trying to get as much as I could done. Missed a few of them. Just couldn't get to them. And so we get to the rehearsal. My buddy, the other guy, is also busy. He didn't have a lot of time to prepare. So as the two, actual members of this band were listing off songs, person B, and further set the scene, I am person A number one.
Man, you need to stick to one naming scheme. Your story's getting just so hard to follow.
Try to follow me in my brain race track. So person B says, well, okay, I'm going to cut a bunch of this out. I'm going to reset. So, songs are getting called, and person B goes a few times, don't know that tune. And when we get to a tune that we both know, we play it, it's great. And they start calling off tunes again, and there happens to be a tune that I don't know. And person B is like, oh, come on, man, let's just try it. I don't know if this is, a regular expectation or not, but I expect to be extended the same courtesy as I'm extending to somebody else.
Yeah.
You don't know that tune? Okay, that's cool. Let's move on. I have relative confidence in my abilities to, fumble through something and figure it out. But when time is limited, I don't want to waste everybody's time.
To fumble, yeah.
Yeah. Just because you know it and doesn't mean that I know it and that it'll be, you know, as easy for me to pick up. Just it turns my tuners a little bit.
Well, I mean, that's a big thing is like preparedness at rehearsals. You want to like, I mean, if you are expected to do some kind of like prep work, you should have done that prep work, right? You know, so in this case, there was obviously like not enough time to cover everything. And this guy who didn't get to tons of the tunes is, you know, getting after you for not getting to one of the tunes. It's just dumb. It's stupid.
Yeah. I mean, like, and this isn't like a, you know, classroom situation. There, when you start playing music and going playing places out in the real world, you're gonna run into every type of different situation. You might get one rehearsal with 24 hours notice before the gig, um, and you just gotta make do with what you got. But in situations like that where time is limited, uh, if you wasting time trying to fumble is, my opinion, a big no-no. Just go through the stuff you prepared for, and when you go home, prepare for the rest of the stuff. Like actually, uh, you know,
Yeah,
do
it's
your
about
stuff.
it's about like taking advantage of the time that you have. I have a gig coming up on Tuesday with a band that I've never played with before, and we're gonna have a rehearsal this weekend, and then we're gonna have a rehearsal on Monday, the night before, right? And they gave me some tunes to listen to and like figure out and come up with parts for and everything else. And I got to meet with the singer of the group, the gal that runs it, earlier this week, and we sat down and we started playing through tunes. We played through like maybe 3 tunes, and I was like, all right, you know, this is fun. It looks like I can hang on these tunes. Like if we had to play a gig right now, I wouldn't embarrass myself, right? We'd be okay. I'd just stay out of the way for the most part. But
Mhm.
you know, eventually I said, hey, well, since we have time right now, why don't we go through some of the like hardest songs? Because our time is going to be better spent with me like actually nailing some of the hard stuff as opposed to just sitting around and like fumbling through everything one time. You know, like none of that's going to
Mhm.
stay in my mind. None of that's actually going to help me. Why don't we like try to nail down like 2 or 3 of them, and then I know that those 2 or 3 are like done.
Mhm. And another thing to sort of uh, piggyback off the whole fumbling deal, like if I'm playing a song that has like repeated sections, like a chorus that happens 3 times, like in a rehearsal, that's okay. That's something I'm okay with fumbling through because uh, I have enough confidence in my abilities that I'll fumble through it the first time. I'll get it a little bit more the second time through. And then the third time the chorus comes around, I'll have it, you know, 90%. I'll be able to nail it 90%. And what I don't like is when somebody stops the rehearsal to show me a part. Like,
Yeah.
um, I
I,
mean, I am kind of dumb, but like I don't like having my little intelligence insulted.
I think a lot of people are used to actually, you know, I think they're used to working with musicians where parts need to be over explained. And that's not to be a dig at anyone or say that we're such great musicians or anything, because there's tons of people that would crush us. But, you know, there's a difference between working with like a hired musician. You hire someone to like sit in and be your guitar player or your bass player or whatever, versus like your buddy who like does music on the side as well, right? You know, you're not going to have to explain things in as much detail to someone like us who regularly gets hired as a sideman. We'll pick it up quite a bit faster, and yeah, you're probably going to slow it down by stopping and explaining it, man.
I feel like we should like write resumes like of the types of skills that we have and like explain like how they work. Like if a song has a chorus that happens 3 times, let me fumble through the first two. And if I don't have it by the third time, then maybe show me. But like uh it's all about efficient time management. Like that's been my number one priority this year. Like how I can use my time efficiently so I can be lazy the other 20 hours of the day.
If you're taking a song that has like, verse chorus, bridge, double chorus out, like your standard kind of pop format, yeah, I mean, you should be able to play through it and understand how the verses and choruses work. And, if there's some weird stop time something somewhere, or like, like a quiet chorus or like whatever, you'll figure that out as you go through, and you'll be aware of it next time. The only thing I think that it's okay to like stop and go back to is the bridge, because normally the weird stuff's going to happen, and, you might have that weird stop time moment, or you might have like, weird different chords or something. And I feel like normally, like if you were going to do the fastest rehearsal of a song, it's probably what you do. You'd be like, all right, let's play through the whole thing and I'll get it by the end. And then let's start again from the bridge so I can have like a pass two on that. And then like, let's go for it. Like, that's good.
Yeah, like I feel like most times the bridge only happens once and different things happen. So that's usually the part that I need to pay a little extra attention to. Um, and I'll include a couple pictures of like charts that I've made for just standard pop songs. They're really basic, really sloppily written in my serial killer handwriting. Other people's words, not mine.
Yeah.
But yeah, like kind of give you an idea of like how I learn tunes and how I get prepared. Like with essentially everything I do is to try to minimize the effort like I can put in. Like I'm trying to do things with as little effort as possible. I don't really like trying. Try not to try.
Yeah, man, I do the same thing. I chart almost everything with numbers, like if I have to chart it. And then like diamonds for like held pauses where you hold out the chord. And actually, I don't know why, but a lot of times I write X's over chords where it's like a full stop. But I don't think that's standard in any way. I don't know what people normally do for that. Maybe they just write a dash after the chord to be like a half rest or something.
Mm-hmm. Like chart writing is weird because there are two types of situations you have for chart writing. You have one for your own personal consumption, you can do whatever you want, and two, when you're given charts to other people, and then you have to sort of follow rules. But I'm not really certain on what the rules are. It feels like it changes from band to band.
Yeah, a lot of people have like different lazy chart rules.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, Marin, my chance to rant. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking about your like kind of rehearsal story. And I was going to say that my big problem with rehearsals can be summed up pretty quickly by my middle school band teacher, who used to say, like, are we practicing or are we rehearsing right now? And I always loved that because it kind of points out, I think if you're having a problem at a rehearsal, this is probably it. It's about whether or not you're actually rehearsing as a group or whether or not it's like a bunch of people individually practicing in the same room. And that's horrible. That sucks to be in that situation. Like, you don't want to be there. Like, if you've ever been in a rehearsal where you're supposed to be running things through, like as a band, and someone says, hold on, let me practice that real quick, you might be in a bad rehearsal.
You might be wasting your time.
Yeah. Like, that's the kind of work that should already be done. And, I don't, I mean rehearsal in the truest sense of the word, right? You might be like in a writing scenario, maybe like you're writing a tune and someone comes up with a cool idea and says like, hold on, let me practice that real quick. That's different. That's not a rehearsal. That's like writing a tune.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't, I wouldn't want to be in a rehearsal where that happened. And it sucks because I know I've been that guy. I think everyone's been that guy. But I think we should all probably try our hardest to never be that guy again. You should be as prepared as possible for everything that's coming. And if that means like always having your cell phone out and like recording like voice notes so you know how all the tunes go and stuff like that, do that. Be that person. Record the rehearsal. That's fine. But there's no reason why you should have to show up to rehearsal and like relearn all your parts from the other person that plays guitar, or, like have to reteach all the bass parts to your bass player. Sorry, bass players of the world.
It's all good.
You're not guilty, but so many of your bass playing compatriots are guilty of that. They show up and
Oh
they're
man,
like, "How's this
I'm
bass
I'm
line go again?"
guilty. I can't tell you how many times I was playing with this funk and soul band, um, and I just showed up to rehearsal not knowing the song, and the leader knew what I was about, so he would always say, "Let's just take a listen to the song, listen through it once," and then I had the tools I needed, and it was fresh in my mind, so I was able to fool all of them. Maybe. I don't know.
That's good. You're so lazy, man. The laziest.
I really hate moving.
You're yeah, on your resume, instead of lazy, you would definitely write like time management.
Expert at economy of motion.
Yeah. Not just in playing, in all aspects of life. Yeah. That's good. People will be like, "What does this mean?" And you'll be like, "Well, I wrote this resume while laying on my bed."
Okay, like quick side note. I was doing a guitar solo day on Tuesday for my lo-fi stuff, and I'm doing a batch of 18 tracks now, and I take four passes through each track. So I think I got my math right. That's 72 guitar solos. And by the time I hit 50, I was just done. So I set my laptop up at like the foot of my bed, and then I would get up, set the song up, get the section I wanted, and then I'd lay down, guitar in on my chest, and just hit the space bar, the record button, with my heel and just run through it. I did that for a solid hour just because I was done.
Yeah, man. That's good. Oh, yeah. I think it's cool your recording thing. Totally off topic once again, but I think that's really good practice too. Another kind of like guilty thing, not rehearsal wise, but recording wise, is guitar players, man, getting under the pressure of the recording studio, and they go to record that guitar solo, and they're like, "Man, I don't know what's happening. Like, it's always so good live, you know. Like, I'm always just crushing it live, and like all these cool ideas and stuff. But like, man, I'm just not really feeling it today. Like, it's weird. It's just like not happening for me."
Are they really crushing it live?
Yeah, obviously not. Anyway, what would have helped them though is like playing a million solos to or recording and listening to all of them, being like, "Hey, that one wasn't good either," you know.
Yeah. It also helps that I have like zero care about what I lay down. Like I've completely disregarded all the changes that I wrote. I don't have any idea what the changes really are. Like I just played them, 18 of them in a day. So I didn't take the time to write it down. I just picked out a cool little melody I liked and then played that and then called it good. So I just it's real easy when you don't care.
Anyway, man, what else you got to rant about?
This one's not specifically music related, but I've seen it wreak havoc in a lot of relationships musically. If you're gonna bust balls, prepare to have your balls busted. Like,
oh man,
I've seen so many guys just like busting somebody's balls, and then the moment somebody fires back a little bit, they turn into a thin sheet of glass. It's very frustrating, especially if you're like in a position where somebody's busting your balls and you're not trying to bust theirs. You just have like a small point of criticism, like, "Hey man, I think you might be rushing a tad," and they take that as ball busting when it's not. It's criticism.
Yeah.
I have a great story about that. I told a dude, hey man, I think we should address the rushing, and he told me, rushing? I don't rush, man. I don't know who you're listening to, but it's not me. And so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to approach this a different way.
Yeah.
Played through a tune, and I'm like, okay, man, we really gotta address the rushing issue. And his response to me was, now you're just getting mean. Like, okay, I was not intending to offend or hurt your feelings. It was just something I thought we should address as a band. And then dude starts getting all defensive and like doing that thing when when you argue where you bring in other points.
Oh yeah,
Like
that I've already lost thing where you're like, all right, man, I gotta like dig deep. I gotta find something else to like bring up.
yeah. And after about like 15 minutes of that, he was like, maybe I do rush. Maybe I do. And I had to eat his essentially temper tantrum for 5 minutes. I had to give this guy rides to all the gigs.
Man.
I was like, I think it might be a good idea if you try to find another ride home tonight. And then he just lost his mind, and I had to eat him insulting me for 20 minutes straight. Fired him the next day, so I got the last laugh.
I don't understand how it's so confusing to get that. But yeah, when you're like rehearsing, any kind of criticism should be for the betterment of the band. Just like when you're writing a song, any, like new idea should be for the betterment of the song. None of that should be like for the betterment of you as a person, right? Because it's not really about you at that moment. It's about what everyone as a group is doing. So yeah, if you're in a rehearsal and someone is like, hey, that note's wrong, or like you're singing your harmony a little bit off, or like blah, 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 blah. They're not saying, hey, you as a person, what is fundamentally you, like down to your soul, is awful. And I need you to stop being awful. That's not what you're saying. What you're saying is like, hey, this one little thing is like hurting the group as a whole, and I want the group as a whole to be good, and you're part of this group, and I'm sure you want it to be good too, and let's all just be good together, man.
Yeah, like one of my mottos is service the song. Like, serve what the song needs, what the song requires, not your ego. However thick-skinned or more often than not, I've, in my experience, how fragile you are.
Yeah, totally.
But another time, when ball busting went wrong, I was playing with this guitar player. I was musical director of this band, and we were coming up to the ending of a tune. And he had just been busting everybody's balls like beforehand. We were all having a good time. It was fun. But we come to end a tune, and we're all sustained at the 4 chord, and then he just plays a big fat 1 chord, and to end the song. And one of my favorite things is like I seem to be real fixated on like balls today. I don't know why, but kind of giving the audience like blue balls, like not ending on like a 1 chord, like ending on a 4 chord or
a 6 chord or something.
Chord. Yeah. Or if it ends on a 6 chord, like put the 2 underneath it, so it becomes like a 2 sus7 chord. But so he plays this big fat 1 chord. He's the only one to do it. And I let out a big "Ayo!" and we all laugh. And then the dude has the gall to say, "How was I supposed to know?" And so I might have been a little bit tired, a little sleep deprived, a little short tempered. So I busted balls back with what I thought was a hefty truth bomb. You listen and you pay attention. Yeah. Use your ears. And then the dude just turned into a wet blanket for the rest of the night. Like, he got offended. Granted, I was a little bit of a jerk, but I mean, if you're going to have the gall to say, how was I supposed to know?
Yeah.
Don't ask a question you really don't want the answer to.
Yeah.
Like, and
how do you
this,
think we all knew? How did we all know that? That's how you were supposed to know.
We were looking around. We were paying attention. Like, I mean, if you ask a question, think before you ask that question and think to yourself, do I really want to know the answer to this? Even if it's a rhetorical question, because that might save you some heartache. I know if I would have asked myself, do I really want to know the answer to that question? I would have been saved lots of heartache in my life.
Also, it's funny just because it's kind of an easy thing to laugh off. Like, if I had been in a gig with you and I had done that, if I had done that exact thing and you had, like, given me that response, I would have thought it was really funny. And I would have been like, yeah, I suck right now. And that's all it would have taken to, like, diffuse that entire situation. Is just be like, yeah, I messed up.
Yeah. Like, I guess, like, another sub point is just own your mistakes, own them, like, vow to do better. Like, never be like, own a mistake and like, yeah, I made a mistake, I'm gonna keep making that mistake.
Yeah, it's my style now. Don't be that guy.
This isn't jazz. I hear the phrase thrown around, there are no wrong notes, only wrong resolutions. I think there are some wrong notes. I think you can play a wrong note every now and then.
Anyway, I was gonna say a good one that's also like not really playing related, but like if you're hanging out with other musicians, really don't touch things and don't borrow things unless you've kind of gotten express permission. And it's never been like a huge deal for me. Like, I can't think of any like giant moments. Well, that's not true. I can think of some, but you know, I just really don't like it when people like grab things and use things and just don't realize their worth. I mean, the guitar that I play for all my gigs is expensive. You know, it wasn't cheap. It's definitely outside of the like beginner or like, kind of medium price range. It's in that high price range. And, like I play bluegrass, so everything else is expensive. My capo was $50. My guitar pick was $50. My strap was $50. All this stuff is not like cheap stuff. This isn't like run-of-the-mill stuff. It's not borrowed. It's not hand-me-down. And I care about it, and I want it all to function really well. It's an acoustic guitar. I don't run it into an amp or anything, so everything on it has to function well and be good. And when people just like pick it up, don't say anything, and start playing, and I've caught people so many times like taking that pick and just keeping it in their hand after they hand the guitar back or after they set it back down, and I'm like, no, put that back. You're gonna walk off with that, and I can't have you walking off with that.
Jerks. Like, that's one thing I really take to heart is just, if it's not yours, don't touch it. Like, ask first. I was actually doing a guitar gig one time, and we were all done. Afterwards, the bass player puts his bass down and just picks up my guitar. And I'm just like standing there with my hand on my hip, and like he has no idea. And I'm like, hey, when did I say you could touch that?
Yeah.
Just being like 100% a jerk. Like, truth is, I really didn't care. I just wanted the opportunity to be a jerk because I had had a few drinks.
Man, I like how
man.
all your stories like have a good point, and then you like totally ruin it with like something at the end, like, "Hey, I guess I was kind of a jerk," or like, "I had a few drinks," or. I like that. We should try to constantly undermine our own points.
It's like I'm the comedian who gets to the punchline and then keeps going.
Yeah, you're that guy. That's good. I don't like that. I don't like the story you just told for a couple of reasons. Like, I think that after you finish a gig, noodling on instruments is super unprofessional. Like, after you finish a gig, like, things should go in the cases, and it should be like what you paid for is over, kind of. When a show finishes and the band kind of lingers or the instruments stay out of their cases, they keep kind of jamming and hanging out. I don't think that looks very good. I don't like that before a gig either. I don't like when people are too casual because it kind of sends it kind of sends this wrong message of like, we're just going to do this anyway, instead of like, we're here giving you like a professional service, you know?
Yeah.
And then on top of that, it not being his own instrument, him like picking up someone else's instrument and being like, I'm going to do this unprofessional thing with your instrument. It's kind of a bummer.
Yeah, like totally it was totally in the wrong. I didn't really care. I just wanted to be, just flex my nuts a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not saying like don't have fun or anything. I think you should understand the time and place. Like if you're with a band for a long time and like everyone's cool and you know that you can like play around on each other's instruments and there's some kind of level of respect and everything else, then yeah, I mean, you could be in a rehearsal space and you'd be playing someone else's instrument. It's not a big deal. But I mean, you've sort of earned that relationship with those people, right? I remember one time, this is an unrelated story, but just a funny messing around story. I played a gig that was like way outside of town, kind of like in the middle of nowhere kind of gig. And I was playing with a mandolin player. And after we played the gig, we all like packed up and stuff. And mandolin cases are pretty small if you've never seen a mandolin case. So when the mandolin player's back was turned, I took the mandolin and I loaded it into the car, kind of without him seeing. And then I went and I tapped him on the shoulder and I acted like I was all freaked out. And I was like, hey, man, that guy with the beard that was sitting there, he just took off with your mandolin. And and the mandolin player like turned around and his face was immediately like so angry, like he was hulking out, like full of rage, And I immediately knew that the joke had gone too far. Like within like 1 second of the joke starting, I was like, no, I'm just kidding. It's in the car. I loaded it up for you.
Oh, that's great.
Don't even have time to like develop it. It's time to stop. Don't continue with that.
I had played with that dude who picked up my guitar like lifetime, like 8 times by that point. So, and I was playing every week, so that wasn't that much. I mean, we saw each other around and stuff, but our relationship was not at that level yet. Luckily for me, I buy really cheap instruments, so everything is replaceable.
Yeah, I guess
if it's not yours, just don't touch it.
Yeah, that's the easy way to wrap it up. I mean, you don't know if it used to belong to like their dad or their grandpa or their great-grandpa or their great-great-grandpa. You don't know like how expensive it actually is. I mean, sometimes it's honestly hard to tell like how expensive the instrument you're looking at is, just at face value. I mean, they make them more expensive and beat them up, so you can get a road-worn guitar.
I think they're called relict.
Oh yeah, I like
relicking.
I like the finish over the cigarette burn.
I got a pawn shop bass that some dude had taken a lighter to. He tried to relic it himself. That was my gigging bass for a long time. My dad painted it camouflage for me.
Oh, I didn't know that was like a custom paint job.
Oh yeah, the camo bass. Yeah, it was custom. Did you ever see my Jeep?
No, I don't think so.
My Jeep had the same paint job, so the bass matched the Jeep.
I only ever saw the legendary the Cadillac.
Oh, that was a great car. Loved that car.
If I could just tell a brief story about the Cadillac, the glove box was unopenable because some relative of yours, was it your little brother or something?
My little brother.
He put a penny right in the like keyhole and it stuck perfectly. And when Lyman told me the story, he said that his little brother said, "Hey, I wonder if a penny would fit in here." And then it fit perfectly. So no one could ever get the penny out, and so you couldn't unlock it, so it was just permanently closed. That's great.
I just told everybody that it was permanently locked. It was actually permanently unlocked.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I just told everybody that it was permanently locked so they wouldn't try to get in it.
Like, man, why didn't I ever try that thing? I could have gotten in there. Man,
Yeah,
what
you could have
treasures you might have had.
stolen my Rick Astley tape.
Man, you got one of those too? Mine's like
You
right over there. my
really?
greatest hits, Rick Astley. Yeah.
I have the tape with I guess it would be his greatest hits. I think it was like his first or second album, but like it's the one with the hits on it.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, man, moving on from Rick Astley because this conversation could go on for forever, obviously. What do you want to do now, huh?
Let's play a game.
Yeah, I'm in.
Let's play a game. Overrated, underrated.
Right, and you played this when I wasn't around.
Yeah, I played it with Miles. And it was fun. I didn't say anything too stupid or ignorant. Hopefully we can change that today.
Yeah.
I'll ask my question first.
Oh,
Overrated,
no.
underbraided. Underbraided.
Nice, man. Yeah, this isn't braided enough.
Overrated, underrated. Showboating. Hamming it up.
Oh, man. I think that, man, that's a really tough question. I think it's kind of underrated. Like, I feel like more people should do that. Like, there should be, if you're gonna like I feel like when we have a show, you should put moments like on a pedestal. So like if you're gonna have a moment in a show where you are like showing off or like doing the most, then yeah, you should put that moment on a pedestal and you should like have that moment where you get to kind of showboat. But in terms of like doing it all the time, I don't think that's a good thing. But I think that sometimes you get artists that are like afraid to do it, that are kind of like better players than they are, and they just never let loose. And I think that's a really bad kind of approach to the whole thing.
Yeah, like I'm gonna give the same answer. Underrated. Like, I don't think you have to be Spock on stage when you go and see a live show, and you're not blind. I don't mean like blind in the sense like baseball umpires, but like blind like you actually can't see. Like there is a visual aspect to this show, and I think it's at least a little bit of our responsibility as performers to pay some attention to that. You don't have to be jumping up and down the entire night. You don't have to be Flea, but like rehearsing a couple dance moves, maybe a couple bass faces, guitar faces. Like I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's underrated. At least like I come from jazz where it's you're encouraged to be Spock on stage.
Yeah.
And I mean, one time I went to a Lionel Hampton Jazz Festival and I saw Jeff Hamilton and Wally Gator Watson having a drum off, and they're just trading 4s or 8s or something. And like after one of Watson's sections, he just gets up off of his kit and starts walking to the microphone. And when it comes time for his drum solo, essentially he does this sort of thing. You can't see what I'm doing, but like I got one hand on one side of my face, and then I'm clapping and using my mouth to sort of manipulate the sound. I don't know how well that translates.
No, I get it.
Microphone. But I thought that was super cool. So don't be Spock all the time.
Yeah, man. I think, like I said, it's definitely important to like give it context. So like put it on a pedestal, right? If you're gonna have like your moment where you're kind of overdoing it, then overdo it there. If you're gonna have like when someone else is overdoing it, let them have their moment too, right? Don't like I don't know. I don't want to see a bunch of people just messing around on stage.
Yeah.
All right, man. Overrated, underrated. I was gonna say, like the real books and the fake books.
Oh, oh, 100% overrated
Yeah,
every
man.
time. Like, I remember, like, I used a fake book when I was starting out, and then the first time I ever saw somebody like play without a book, like I was on a gig and this saxophone player was just calling tunes and playing them. Oh, you don't need the book? I just blew my mind. Like, I mean, I was 17 years old, and so was this guy, like, just playing from memory. And so, like, I started to look more into it, and uh, the only real way to learn a song, IMO, is you listen to it, you transcribe it, you hear how it was done through the ages. Like, you can trace back, like, the lineage of a song, and um, you're just gonna get way more information out of that than you would like out of um, some notes on a page with chord symbols over them.
Yeah, right. That are like maybe in the wrong key and like maybe have some like chords that aren't there or like are the wrong chords or etc.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a time and a place for them. Like, you get called to do a gig with three people who have never played together. Uh, I mean, a fake book is a real easy way to get everybody figuratively and literally on the same page.
Yeah.
Um, but if you're gonna learn tunes, don't use Facebook.
Don't use Facebook to learn music, man. Why'd you even think that was a thing?
Don't use a fake book. I am having a bad speaking day today.
Yeah, same thing goes for bluegrass too. Don't learn it from a book. That's it.
Are there bluegrass fake books?
Yeah, there are. I have a couple. I guess I don't have them around me. They're normally called things like there's one that's popular that's called like the parking lot picker's handbook or something. But it's the same concept and yeah, it's not very useful. I mean, I guess I don't know. I guess it's useful if you like have no idea what the tune is like and you can look at it and be like, all right, this is like some kind of starting point. And then you can like look through a million recordings. But I would certainly never bring one around to a jam or like try to read out of it and like expect to get anything useful, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, whoever publishes those. If you ever want to do something together, let me know.
Sorry, Hal.
Yeah, sorry, Hal. Oh man.
Overrated, underrated. Hammer-ons and pull-offs.
Oh man. Yeah, that's tough. I think that's tough just because of the person you're talking to. I'm going to say that they're kind of overrated. I think that a lot of people use them in instances where they don't need them. And that leads to like a lot of problems. And sometimes people want, you know, those problems, but for the most part, I don't. So a lot of people use a lot of hammer-ons and pull-offs when they're doing like a lot of classic rock and roll licks and stuff, and it'll make things like a little sloppier, a little looser, a little like kind of grittier or whatever. I'm even thinking of a specific lick. I'm thinking of that Jimmy Page. But I don't think that kind of sound really translates to anything that I ever do. I would rather like pick as many notes as possible. And only when I'm trying to include like a phrasing aspect or I'm trying to copy the sound of another instrument like a fiddle or a banjo or something like that, would I actually use a slide or a hammer-on. Of course, when I'm shifting too, right? When you shift positions, that mostly has to be done with slides unless you have super big hands. But yeah, for the most part, I think that, I was even one of those people that overused them. I remember when I was trying to play my first bluegrass solos, I would try to fill them all up with like hammer-ons and pull-offs, and I would get these weird like I would try to like do these weird things where in reality, if I had just taken that phrase, whatever I played before, sounds much clearer and it has a lot more definition if you're actually picking all these things.
Mm-hmm. I think we disagree on this one, which is good.
That's cool, man. I think it's more a genre thing than anything, probably.
Yeah, I think hammer-ons and pull-offs are underrated, but not by much. I am a serial user of hammer-ons and pull-offs, but like recently I've been trying to learn phrases like uh picking everything and also hammering everything. It's real faint. It's something I got to warm up to do a little bit. But I want to be able to have all combinations of playing with just the left hand and using the right hand to articulate.
Yeah, right. You wanna be able to hit it from every direction. I get that.
But I was playing at this sort of free jazz session, and like I was doing the solo, and I listened back, and to me it sounds, nothing like the guy, not even close, but like pretty Holdsworthian to like my ears, and I was doing a lot of. Lots of legato strokes. It's real easy to keep the space between two notes at a minimum if you don't use your pick. So I don't have very many good reasons for this one, but hammer-ons, pull-offs, underrated.
Yeah, man. How about overrated, underrated guitar pedals?
Oh, what kind?
I guess the whole concept of kind of being a gearhead, really,
That still doesn't really answer my question because I love guitar effects. I cannot afford pedals. So I don't have pedals. I do, however, have a MIDI little foot controller with like 10 different MIDI banks, different MIDI CCs and everything that I use to control like tons of different effects. And so I guess I could approach the question like this. The price of pedals is way overrated. You can get a real similar sound using a digital setup. Don't at me. But like actual guitar effects, like there's something to be said about the pure tone of a guitar. I don't know what that sounds like, but I hear there's something to be said. But I think guitar effects are slightly underrated if you use them right. That goes back to last episode when I was talking about like how to tone. Like that's what most of my effects are. They're just parametric EQs and compressors, multi-band compressors, and different amp models and different like convolution reverb simulating different rooms. So like I feel like I can get my electric guitar with flat wounds, my Stratocaster with flat wounds, to sound any way I really want it to. With some limits, but less than you would think.
I agree, man. I would totally agree with everything you just said. I don't think that. Yeah, I don't. I think that the big problem with like guitar processing and effects is just that they tend to be used in a really like grab bag kind of way. Like people are like, hey, my guitar should have something out of it. And they just reach into the sack of effects and they just like toss some stuff on. And a lot of times I think that's kind of the problem. I think when all that stuff is chosen very carefully and set up well, I think it actually holds a lot of weight. For that reason, I think that a lot of effects and processing get a lot of hate and people, diss on like, what's the guy? You remember that documentary, Some Like It Loud? It might get loud rather. and the guy from U2, right?
The Edge.
The Edge, yeah. And it's funny, you know, because Jack White and Jimmy Page are talking about playing guitar, and the Edge is like, check out all the pedals I got. And I know that he got made fun of a lot for that, but, you know, I kind of see the benefit of that. I get that if you really carefully produce that sound, you create something really interesting that has value.
Yeah. His sound is so big and great. I love the Edge.
I just don't like the idea of like, you know, of that guy who just buys more and more pedals and more effects, just turns them all on at the same time. And it's like, you know.
I can play a square wave.
Yeah. Oh, man. Anyway,
a square wave with delay.
Yeah, so all right, let's move on to what we're listening to right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go first.
This is our reoccurring segment, by the way. We always talk about some stuff at the end, and we like to keep that going. It just reminded me that I forgot about my favorite reoccurring segment that I normally do in the beginning, and that is, what is the color of the cup that Lyman's drinking out of today? And for all of you at home, oh, what is that? Is that brown?
This isn't actually water. This is liquid nicotine.
Oh.
Very poisonous.
Yeah, you've been hitting that jewel.
I've been staring at it every single time we do a podcast. I actually don't have a water cup with me today, so.
Oh man, Lyman, you're just letting me down. All right. Anyway, yeah, what we're listening to right now. Go ahead, man. You can get into it first.
After talking, a few episodes back about, anime music, I decided to go to the source.
Oh, man.
I am listening to traditional Japanese folk music. For a few different reasons. One, the melodies are very simple and, in my opinion, quite beautiful. And two, there's a bunch of it that's public domain that I can steal and reharmonize. This isn't any song in particular or anything like that, but could be you can reharmonize it, nice pentatonic melodies that I can do stuff with and play around with and feel good about using because they're public domain.
You nerd.
And also, I found a bunch of charts with, these traditional Japanese folk songs that is really good for me to practice on my sight reading, because I am a very bad reader, and these melodies are pretty simple, and these rhythms are pretty simple. So I'm trying to get my reading chops back into shape. I say back into shape like they were ever in shape, but I want to learn how to read.
Oh, man. Yeah, whenever Lyman has important documents to sign, sometimes he'll send them to me, and I'll have to read them out to him, and I'll tell him what they say. He's got text-to-speech for the internet.
Mm-hmm. Really wish I could read.
Yeah.
Man, I'm getting better.
There's just so many letters, the P's and the G's. They just look so similar.
Yeah, A, B, and so forth.
And the others.
X.
Yeah.
M and L-O.
Yeah. I was about to say the exact same thing.
Bonus points if you leave a comment saying where I stole that bit from.
Yeah, well, that's cool, man. That's that's different. You continue to pick weird things.
Yeah.
I think the anime theme songs was weirder somehow, though.
Yeah, maybe. But it's cool because Miles is also listening to anime music and said so on the podcast.
That's good, man. I kind of stopped at Cowboy Bebop. Cowboy Bebop's got the best soundtrack.
Oh yes, that band is absolutely ridiculous.
Yoko Kano, I think. Man, I don't remember. Hopefully that's right. I think it's Yoko Kano and the Seatbelts is the name of that jazz band.
Yeah, the Seatbelts. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. What am I listening to? That's a good question. So besides,
whoops, I forgot something. I forgot to. I got tossed the ball and then I just threw it on the ground.
No,
here, Marcel, go pick it up. Sorry, man.
No, it's fine. Yeah. So other than like Panama by Van Halen and Burnin' For You by Blue Oyster Cult, just on repeat. Honestly, I think I mentioned this in a previous podcast. I don't remember. But I've been practicing a lot of fiddle tunes, and I've been trying to just run a lot of fiddle tunes over and over again, so I can, they're basically like bluegrass standards. So I can just try to keep them all inside my head, and if I can practice like 50 different tunes in a day, I think it's kind of helping my retention, because I feel like some of those tunes were falling behind as they do, and then they get called and you're like, I remember like half of that, I guess. But I've kind of extended that into just like listening to a million different versions of the fiddle tunes, which has been really cool. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you just don't know exists and you haven't heard before. And there's some awkward melodies, like for instance, there's a tune called Billy in the Low Ground, and the A part sounds like this. Right, that kind of stuff. And I found an old recording where someone plays it the octave up, which is kind of awkward, and I never really wanted to do. But by listening to the recording and where they slid and everything, I figured out how they figured it out, and it's really easy.
With those slides, is that something you're specifically listening for? You're listening for where the slides happen?
Yeah, so I can tell where they shifted positions.
Yeah, that's something I never thought of, because there's one every podcast. I'm a moron.
Yeah, so the really interesting one in that tune. This is my podcast to do the long, boring guitar talk like Lyman normally does. What's interesting about that melody, about finding the slides of that melody, if I play it again. So there's some ones that are kind of obvious. Obviously, I had to shift up right there because I ran out of fingers, and I have to shift up again because I ran out of fingers again. And this is my favorite one. You have to shift back to start the melody again. And then, once again, you have to shift back because you've also run out of fingers. Which means that the repeat has an extra slide in the beginning. I can play like that, and the repeat, I have to play it. Which is really neat, right? Because your hand is returning back to that spot. I don't know. I found that interesting, and just like ways people have found an easy way to finger it. You could, probably finger it all in this shape. Find it all in that little like E shape right up there. But you wouldn't be on strings that are gonna like vibrate the top as much. When you get down to like your E, A, and D string, and you're really high up the fretboard, they just tend to sound kind of, kind of muddy, and like, actually sometimes they sound really metallic-y. They don't really like have a lot of resonance to them. I'd rather be like slightly farther down the neck on a different string, so that way I can just like push more sound out of my instrument.
Mm-hmm. Longer string length, do you think that has something to do with it? Like, there's
definitely
more string vibrating?
Yeah, you can hear, if you take like all the places that this note appears, high open G string, like you can hear like that first one is the brightest, clearest one.
I want to try. Huh, interesting.
Yeah, so depending on what you're doing, right, you would pick one of those. So obviously, like if you're playing bluegrass or like if you were like playing a telly, like if you were playing country stuff, you'd want to pick those too, just because they're like all bright and snappy, right? Um, I don't know, all that stuff kind of like makes sense with those notes.
All right, I have so many questions. First off, is your G string wound?
Yeah, it is.
Cool. Second off, how do you get that bend?
Oh yeah, so when I bend on an acoustic guitar, right, I try to put as many fingers down as I can, and it's actually, I mean, it's not easy. It's hard. Most of the bends aren't full either. Your ear kind of like forces you to feel like they are, and it's kind of weird when you bend on an acoustic guitar. On my high E string, I can really only get a half step, which is weird because it's my skinniest string. You think I'd be able to push it farther? Something about my fingers being on the edge of the fretboard makes it hard to push that much further. When I'm on my B string, I can actually get a whole step, and I think it's just because I have more kind of frame of reference right there. Like I have more fretboard under my hands, and it's a little easier for me to position that. Because when you're bending on an acoustic guitar, it's so hard to push all the other strings. Then if I have to bend on my G string, like the bend I ended with when I played that little phrase, it's really hard for me to get a whole step. And I actually like to be farther up the neck, because the farther up the neck I am, the easier it is to push those strings, right? If I try to do it down here, there's no way I'll be able to push it. But if I'm in the middle of the neck, I can get that out. Man, that's hard to push out.
And my final question, what gauge strings do you use?
That's a good question. I use the D'Addario phosphor bronze mediums. And yeah, for a while, so I was doing a split pack of they make like a bluegrass set that has mediums on your low strings and lights on your high strings. And I thought that was really cool, but I realized it's kind of BS later. It doesn't really help you out that much, and it can kind of like make the tone of your instrument uneven. Obviously, I don't know why I thought it would be good, but yeah, I just use a normal pack of mediums now. Yeah, the only other string I can really get a bend out on is on my D string. I can get a half step. I guess on my A string and my E string I can get a half step too, but that's about it. So if I do a bend like this, right, I have to start that from just a half step below. So I'm really only moving that third a half step for it to get into position. If I was playing it on a telly, I could get the whole step out of that. But it's so hard to do on the acoustic guitar.
Yeah, like right now I got a 12 as my E string and a 16 as my B string and a wound 24 as my G string. And they're flat wound, so they kind of roll a little bit. So like bending on the G string is like next to impossible for me. Ow.
Yeah, right, yeah.
I can almost get a whole step out of my B string. And like a 0.75 step out of my E string. I don't know.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's tough though. I mean, I know exactly what you're talking about. I think a lot of it has to do with tricking the ear a little bit. I mean, like when you're on an acoustic guitar or an electric guitar that just has like mediums or lights on it, normally you can overbend pretty easily. It's not hard to like overbend a string and like make it out of tune. But we're kind of in that circumstance where we're constantly going to be like underbending, and it's mostly like the audience's ear that's like convincing themselves that we're making it all the way.
I would use bending as a crutch when I was coming up. Like anytime I could bend, I'd just be like, and I eventually went to heavier gauge strings to sort of mitigate that. Like, stop using bending as a crutch, my dude. And yeah, like it's hard to bend when you physically can't. I don't use it much as a crutch anymore, and I also still cannot bend on these strings.
I used to bend a lot at the wrong moments. You know, when I first learned the pentatonic scale, I was just like trying to bend everywhere. When I started playing guitar, you know, like as the only kind of guitar that I played, acoustic guitar, I realized that I couldn't bend, so I just stopped. And then, I made a pretty conscious choice to like want to mimic that like Telecaster country guitar sound, like what I played earlier. And I was like, oh, well, I should learn how to do this on the acoustic guitar. I just started picking up some of those different ways to bend, like really slowly and really carefully, and like practicing them over and over again to like, can I get the full bend? Because I don't know anyone else I can do it on guitar. Can I get it out on guitar? And on acoustic guitar. And it took a long time, and it was pretty awkward. And now I only use them when I'm like doing an affectation of that style, right? I don't use them unless I'm purposefully including a moment that's like, hey, I stole that from like country guitar.
Well, all good stuff, man. Is that the week?
Yeah, I think we're about at it. We're at the time, man. I'm looking at the clock on the wall.
Oh yeah.
I don't have. But
it is a time.
Yeah, it is a time. So where can the people find you, Lyman?
The people can find me at lymanlipke.com. There'll be a link down below. I'm not going to spell it out because I don't really care.
Nice, man. lymanlipke.com, not to be confused with lymanlipke.biz or lymanlipke.gov, the government's website on you.
I am a government.
Oh, man. If you're looking for me, my name's Marcel. You can find me on YouTube, Lessons with Marcel. That's where a lot of stuff is going on. You can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And you can find my website, lessonswithmarcel.com. I have a bunch of free stuff. There's a little bit of stuff for sale. And that's also where you can sign up for Skype lessons if you're interested in that kind of thing. The last thing to talk about is the thing we do together. Yeah, man?
Yeah. We run an Instagram account together called Jazz and Grass. And that's a new lick every weekday, alternating between a bluegrass lick and a jazz lick. And we post 2 on Fridays because uneven numbers make me uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's the only way to keep the schedule in order.
and it makes our page look all pretty.
Yeah, but like we said, it just like had a little boom. So if you want to go check that out, if you want to give us a follow, we'd really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do have one more thing to ask because I've been looking at our stats on Anchor, and it seems like there's more than like one listener. So if you do listen to this podcast, I would absolutely love it if you gave us a rating on iTunes or wherever you choose to listen to this podcast, or subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is Jazz and Grass Podcast.
Yeah, awesome. See, I would give it a review, but I think that would be kind of a conflict of interest. Also, my review probably wouldn't be very good, so.
I'm going to give this podcast a review. I'm going to give it 1 star.
Anyway, yeah, guys, I guess we'll see you all next week. Sound good?
Yeah, sounds like fun. I'll miss every one of you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.